I was thinking about something you have heard me say before, but which is simply write it down. This applies a lot in terms of journaling, but even more so in terms of record keeping. And, I would have a saying that was, if you didn't write it down, it didn't happen. And which is, of course, not true, but it is a way to think about the benefit of recording things, whether it's events in your life or simply data. We have a way of fooling ourselves, and once you actually keep a record of what you do, you find it is often different than what you thought you did. A perfect example, or a minor example, is just in terms of exercise. How often does one exercise? Well, you may have an idea that you do it 3 to 4 times a week, but if you don't write it down at the time that you do it, and then have that to go back and look at, I would be leery to just quickly think that my perception is actually reflective of the reality. And so that's what I mean when I say write it down, or if you didn't write it down, it didn't happen. So in terms of my own goal setting throughout my life, and also in terms of, I would incorporate this into my journal where I would write down my goals, but also my efforts in reaching those goals. So in terms of my writing, I kept a very strict record of how much I wrote each day, because it was only in doing that that I would be able to look back and see, oh, I wrote 5 hours that week. And depending on the vagaries of life, that may or may not have been acceptable. Or I wrote 10 hours that week, or even greater once I obtained the freedom to do so. But if you don't write it down, be leery, I suppose, is the bottom line. Again, it's just a way of thinking about it. It's not the reality. If you don't write an experience down in your journal, it did indeed happen. Although the journal is a way to process it. And, you may keep track of how much food you eat, or at least think you're mentally keeping track of how much food you eat, or certain types of food, depending on what your particular goal is in terms of your health. But if you don't actually write it down, you may find out that you're wrong. So I leave that for you to mull over, to think about in terms of meeting your own goals. And although meeting goals is most certainly not the end-all be-all of life, go forth with goodness. I love you, and be well.